And we are live. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for entering into this webinar, and we really hope that you can get something out of this. This webinar is specifically working on or has a subject on the best hierarchy for startups. This webinar um, is also this webinar is also supervised by Dr. This webinar is supervised by Dr. Abdurrahim now. We will be accompanied by many people with different fields, and I'm going to be introducing them one by one very soon. I hope you guys can give us questions and we can answer them for you, and then we can have a little bit of discussion. This specific webinar is structured in the sense that we have three parts. The first part will be the history of every single management style. The second part would be the pros and cons of them all. Plus, at the end, we're going to have a little debate and see what is the best hierarchy for every startup, considering the opinions of all the experts that we have right now in this webinar. And so, accompanied with me, I have Rahma Usama. She is a team manager at Bayer Rabat. Hello, Rahma.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rahma, as Mr. Youssef said, and I'm a team manager at Bayer Rabat. I've been working there for 5 years, and Bayer Rabat is basically a healthcare company. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rahma. I'm giving the floor to Aisha.
Okay, so hello guys. I have been working at the Catania law firm in Casablanca for the past 3 years. I started up as a paralegal, but I've been promoted to junior partner about 2 years ago, and I'm excited to be here with you.
Considering the coronavirus restrictions that we've been all experiencing, how is Casablanca right now?
So right now the city is locked. We're trying to not be in public spaces as much as we can, and we're still working from home, not in the firm itself. So yeah, I'd say it has been a pretty challenging time. There has been pretty challenging times, but we're managing.
I see. Thank you so much for chiming in. The next person is Selma Eitz Oujod.
Hello, guys. So I'm a social researcher at La Direction des Impôts in Meknes at the Department of Human Resources, and I've been working here for 3 years now, approximately. Approximately.
And our last person would be Yusuf Oswab, and he is the CEO. We're always leaving the best for last. The CEO of Yazaki Kenitfa.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. So, as Mr. Yusuf said, my name is Yusuf, and I am the CEO of Yazaki and Petra. I was working there, I think, for 3 years now, and I am really happy to be here with you today.
Okay, thank you guys so much. Now that we're getting familiar with the people that are going to be in this specific webinar, we can safely start with the definitions of what communication is and what hierarchy is as well. And so, hierarchy is basically a glorified way of saying how communication goes and who has the power. And so, for hierarchy, we can't talk about it without talking about what are the constituents for communication itself. And so obviously there is the sender, there's the receiver, and there's also the messages, but that's not about it. In every single communication episode, we always have noise, and the noise is the influences that either disrupt or shape the interpretation of messages. And so we can have physical noise when you're literally maybe sitting in a restaurant that has a lot of noise around you and you can't really hear the person. And so Sometimes you can hear things differently than you should. Semantic noise, and then hierarchical noise. There's also feedback, and it would be the message that you receive back as the sender, when it comes to the receiver giving you feedback on what you've done and what your message is and how you can better communicate it and stuff like that. And so it would be the activity of providing senders and receivers with responses to their communication ideas and identities. And so another thing is channels, which will be the thoroughfare of a message that takes from the sender to the receiver. So it can be an email, it can be a letter, it can be appearing in person, it can be voice message, it can be anything you want, as long as it provides a message from a sender to a receiver. And obviously, all of these have a different way of a different etiquette and a different use case. And there's always the context. So the context is always the physical situation, the global cultural context, and the communication history. Sometimes when you have history with a person, communication might be easier or communication might be harder depending on what the history is. And that would be it. Now we're gonna go to or start our very first segment of this specific webinar, and it is the history of every single management style. And we've picked out, I guess, four right now. Okay. And so Aisha will be talking about systems of thinking. Selma will take into consideration the transactional model and its history. Yusuf is going to take care of the organizational narratives, and Rahma is going to take care of the classical management. And so I give the floor to Rahma so that she can talk about some more the history of classical management.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. As I said before, my name is Rahma and I'm a team manager at Bayer Rabat. And I will be discussing the first theory of organization and communication, which is the classical management. But before diving in its meaning and pros and cons, we're going to see a little historical background of this topic. So one of the things that come to mind when we hear classical management is that it is possibly an old method of managing a company. Well, we can agree on that. The classical period of management began with the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s, and the movement of people from their farms to cities or from plow fields to factories characterized this period. Since so many people joined the city and mostly worked in factories, store managers and factory owners began to explore new and different ways to manage businesses and organize work, of course. So they chose a strictly vertical top-down arrangement. So what is a top-down arrangement, you may ask? It simply means that there is a board of directors on top. Below was the president. Below the president, the vice president. Then department managers like myself, or team managers, and below them were supervisors, and finally the bottom were line workers, and it is called hierarchy. So this classical organizational structure assigned privileges according to one's rank and status in the organization. And there were two important classical approaches of managing business at the time, which is the scientific management and bureaucracy. And they dominated ways of managing during the classical period. And now that you all know a bit about what is classical management, let's dive into scientific management and bureaucracy. So scientific management emerged in the early 1900s and was defined by an engineer named Frederick Taylor. Taylor believed management was a science and put forth the idea that owners and managers should operate factories and organizations as efficient machines. So to be more simple, he based management on the inner working of a well-made clock, a clock. So he proposed conducting what he called time and motion studies for every task in an organization. Henceforth, business owners and managers had to find the one best way. What is the one best way? It is the method requiring the shortest amount of time using the smallest amount of motion to complete the task. And this way divided tasks into discrete, measurable units and trained workers to perform only one task, which made the replacement easy. It also established a sense of reward and punishment to workers. And on the other hand, managers performed 5 functions. So their 5 functions were planning the work, organizing tasks, commanding or setting goals, and coordinating work, and last but not least, controlling the workforce. And they had only these duties, because in general, there was no room for quality improvement at any level. A man either knew how to do his job or didn't, and workers were treated less than human, and managers could fire or hire based on sex, race, religion, attitude, or relationships in work. Now let's talk about bureaucracy. So although it might not seem so today, the creation of bureaucracy evolved as a more humane way of managing people in complex organizations. Max Weber, a major sociological theorist who observed the rise of scientific management, saw bureaucracies as a mean to overcome the problems of scientific management. He believed that, managed correctly, bureaucracies would stamp out the harsh, inequitable, and often deadly conditions that arise from poor scientific management. And according to Weber, an ideal bureaucracy must have the following elements. So there was fixed division of labor, hierarchy of work responsibilities and authority, and a set of general operating rules that govern performance. There was also a separation of the personal lives of employees from their professional lives. And last but not least, a selection process based on technical qualifications and equal treatment under the rules for operating the business. Thank you for listening to me. I'll leave the floor to Mr. Youssef.
Thank you so much, Rahma. Now let's talk a little bit more, Aisha, about the systems of thinking. Can you please elaborate more on the history of that?
Absolutely. So, as Mr. Yusuf just said, my name is Aisha. I've been a junior partner at the Ictan law firm in Casablanca for the past 3 years. Since our firm is still kind of a startup, we have been using the systems of thinking theory, which combines both holism and interdependence. So what you need to know, first of all, is that holism makes organizations work as wholes and not as isolated entities. Okay, so everyone in the organization in a systems thinking system work as one connected team, and to achieve success, we need all the members to be successful and not just one person out of the team. Okay, so normally a system could be defined as a new way to conceptualize sets of relationships pointing to new kinds of order. And nowadays, thankfully, this word is one that is being constantly used in the business world, as business people are already accepted it and have been steadily using it. This order consists of patterns of interaction throughout its components, which means it is not part of the bureaucracy hierarchies, nor a part of labor divisions. And we will get to explaining this in a minute. To understand this system a little bit better, it is often described as a set of family relationships. So each family member has a say in the other's communication and understandings and meanings. And each and every single member are interconnected with each other. The main components of this system are environment, interdependence, goals, feedback, and the openness, order, and contingency. I'm going to start by explaining the environment. So startups in this basic component represent integral parts of the word and are not isolated entities, which takes me back to what I said about holism. Then we have interdependence. All of the members of the organization are interconnected with each other. Then we have the goal, which is mainly influenced by the environment, and it is discussed with all of the organization entities and members. Fourthly, we got the feedback. It is the transmission of information about a result or an action. We got 2 types of feedback, the negative and the positive one. The negative feedback resets us far away from the original goal, whereas the positive feedback permits new opportunities for growth. Finally, we have openness, order, and contingency. These terms refute the fact that there's only one way to achieve success. To succeed in an organization, we need to be open, to have an organized, evolving pattern, and to be consistent in our work. It is more of a relational type of systematic. Systems of theory contribute in communication in 3 different ways. First of all, the idea of communication networks. Second of all, we got contingent nature of decision making. And then third of all, we have feedback's importance within the organization. These ideas have contributed to the influence of business and professional communication by putting up direct links between the organizational system and the communication in it. The first one is communication flow in networks. 2 patterns stand out in an organization's communication system: the formal and the informal chains of command. The formal one refers to the transmission of information through formal channels, and the informal one refers to transmitted information which is transmitted freely within the organization and not through formal channels, as it is more relational, as we said before. Then we have contingent nature of decision making. This basically is reviewing communication flow, reveals the organization's interconnection and feedback. Rather than just stay still and assume that one decision will make the whole thing work, the companies prefer this strategy as it helps them review their decision whenever there's like a shift or growth in information and in the industries. Finally, we have the feedback and the health of a system. Maintaining an interconnected startup with open communication plays a lot on the organizational health. These lines of communication make sure the feedback is well received, whether negative or positive, and that they can work more on it to grow from it. Okay, so thank you so much, and I will leave the floor to Mr. Youssef to continue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Aisha. That was very enlightening. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Selma, and she's going to talk to us more about the transactional model. Selma?
Yes, hello guys.
History?
Yeah, hello guys. I'm a social researcher at la Direction des Impôts in McNass, and this model, this transactional model, is actually like touches a lot of topics that has a relation with the social studies, humanities. So today I'm going to discuss with you the human relations and the transactional process of communication. So this model in a startup company, it views workers as individuals who can be replaced by machines, and they can actually be educated and trained to enhance an organization's need and to develop their skills. So first, let me explain the transactional model of communication. So it is the exchange of ideas and messages between the sender and the receiver, and it's used for personal communication and interactions. Therefore, it can also be called circular communication process. Second, transactional model is the process of continuous change and the transformation where every component is changing, such as the people, their environments, and the medium that is used. So these 3 are variables and can be changed actually. So due to this, it assumes that the communicators to be independent and act any way they want. So since both sender and receiver are necessary to keep the communication going and to keep it alive in transactional model, the communicators are also interdependent to each other. For example, transactional communication is not possible, for example, if the sender is not listening to the receiver and vice versa. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of transactional process just to make you understand more how it works. So it includes face-to-face meetings, Skype chats, chat sessions, interactive trainings, meetings where ideas and comments are shared, field of experiences, and everything like this. So moving to the next part, which I will elaborate more on 2 studies actually that are very, very important when we approach this model, is the Hawthorne studies and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So first, Hawthorne studies it supports the idea that managers should take into consideration their employees' feelings, and they should support each other in an organization to make it going good. So, moreover, the Hawthorne effect is the inclination of people who are the subjects of an experimental study to change or improve the behavior being evaluated only because it's being studied and not because of changes that can happen in the parameters or stimulus. On the other hand, and in order to better understand the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what motivates human beings, Maslow proposed that human needs can be arranged and organized into a hierarchy, meaning that this hierarchy ranges from more concrete like needs such as food, clothing, water, to abstract concepts such as self-fulfillment or self-actualization or self-improvement. According to Maslow, when a lower need is met, the next need on the hierarchy becomes our focus of attention. So you cannot turn your attention to somebody else unless you meet your fulfillment and you meet your needs. And according to Maslow, of course, we have 5 categories of needs: physiological, safety, love, esteem, and self-actualization. So in this theory, higher needs in the hierarchy begin to emerge when people feel they have sufficiently satisfied the previous needs, meaning that you cannot go from the first step to the third without fulfilling the second. So there's a wide range of steps that you have to go through to self-actualize, self-actualized, right? So then I'm going to leave the floor to Youssef so that he can elaborate more on that.
Thank you so much, Salma.
Mm.
And last but not least, we have Yusuf, and he's gonna talk to us a lot more about organizational narratives and the history about it all. Yusuf, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef, for giving me the floor. So, hello everyone. I'm happy to be here with you today and to present and explain the model of organizational narratives and dialogue, which is an important theory of organization, management, and communication. As we all know, all our experiences give us the raw materials to create an ongoing history of our lives. Similarly, organizational histories are created by workers and administrators of organization and occupations to recreate and retell significant incidents of their working lives. The underlying concept behind the story model is that we live within the lines of the stories we tell people about work, futures, and ourselves in a communicative manner. Our perceptions are not merely reflected by these narratives, they also help in constructing them. The way we make sense of events and others is essentially defined by the ways in which the storylines and lessons of our ongoing stories can be used to render the new in the light of the old. So the 4 types of organizational narratives that emerge as forms of business and professional communication are: first, organizational stories, so person organizational narratives that show how incidents unfold, how challenges have been overcome, how heroes and heroines have been developed, and how legends have been made. Second, we have the work-hate narrative, person accounts of employees' damage, misdeeds, or abuse. These narratives are mostly told in a condition to recover equity, but often they predict as an act of vengeance. Third, we have narrative recovery as a consultation service. These experiences are collectively gathered by all workers in a single agency or region to recover the organization past from a personal viewpoint. So to prompt the narratives, the strategist uses main questions, including, for example, what led you to work here, or what are the personal joys and challenges you have experienced in your life. So fourth, we have the organizational change. Consultants, instructors, and leaders all know that in meetings, productive progress in companies always starts in conversations. Since communication produces conceptions of reality and constitutes structures and societies, it is the duty of communication to put proposals for improvement into life. Stories about these discussions surface as part of every organization of professions' common history, myths, legends, and tipping points. So conceptually, dialogue applies to an ongoing, accessible, and interactive manner through which human communicators have a balanced opportunity to communicate and be understood, and through which each individual takes a deliberate attempt to consider and empathize with the other person's views, perspectives, and roles. So, dialogue aims to encourage identity and culture through communicative empathy, using collaboration to achieve collective development, and looking for concrete trends that can influence personal transformation and organizational improvement. Harold Lloyd Goodall, who was a specialist in human communication, working from an earlier Peter Senge model for describing types of communication, he actually developed a continuum for conceptualizing a range of the following everyday form of talks. So first, we have the fatigue communication. Fatigue communication, we can define it as routine exchanges of small talk, like the familiar talk of every day, like we used to do with our friends and our families. Second, we have the ordinary conversation. You can say discussion, gossip, or information exchange. Three, we have skilled conversation, professional communication, like interviews, negotiations, conflict management, personal narrative stories, and so on. And fourth, we have the dialogue, which is the deep conversation aimed at mutual growth that often requires risk-taking, creativity, and suspension of critical judgment. As this continuum shows, the most sophisticated mode of conversation is dialogue, because dialogue is viewed from a corporative viewpoint as the demands that all workers should be granted equally in terms of communication opportunities. However, merely having a right to speak doesn't adequately address the quality of communication exchanged during a dialogue. The more open the exchange with the other person, the more dialogic the talk becomes. So let's examine the basis for this claim in greater detail, but first, let me give the talk to Mr. Youssef, who will moderate this webinar.
Thank you so much, Yusuf.
Welcome.
And that concludes our very first segment of this specific webinar. Now we're gonna convince you guys to use one of these management styles by giving you the pros and the cons. And so each one of the participants right now are gonna take the floor one by one and tell us a little bit more about why we should be using a specific management style, and what good things does it give us and what bad things does it give us as well. And so I am giving or asking Aisha right now, when your systems of thinking model, what you think is the good is why do you think that the systems of thinking model is good for us, and what is the pros and what is the cons for it?
All right, so I personally believe that systems of thinking is the best strategy to opt for in a business organization, because having changes in business can be healthy. Not a lot of people can admit that, because stagnation is kind of takes a toll on mental health so much, and it's kind of the first reason many startups kind of fail in the beginning of their business. Then I guess because there's open line and communication that create direct channels that can operate immediately in case of an emergency or solve any issues or change of decision in small startups. I guess also we can redesign old broken systems into new evolving ones in our organization. So that is why I believe that systems of thinking are the best strategy. But I'm not, by saying this, I'm not saying that there are no disadvantages, because that would be kind of dishonest on my part. The system's disadvantages, I'm so sorry, would be that gathering around to solve a problem might be easy since the organization is little, but as the company grows, all branches expand and more people add into the company, which makes it a little bit harder to set a reunion to have an overview of the issues that are going on. There is also managing crises as I just said, as the company grows, it's very difficult to set an appointment and try to get everybody's opinions on the issue. So managing a crisis would be very hard. Finally, I would say that all executives have all of the same kind of power in the organization, and that equality could lead to major control issues. Even though many startups have found this way to be efficient, ours notably. All in all, I think the system is great. It has a deep influence on theories of organization and management, as long as we keep it a small startup with a concise number of people.
Understandable. Thank you so much, Aisha.
You're very
I'm
welcome.
giving the floor, or I'm asking to the floor, Yusuf, so that he can talk to us some more about the organizational narratives and why we should use it, as opposed to the systems of thinking management.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef, for giving me the floor. So first, I want to start by saying that the knowledge of mindless communication shows that we don't necessarily act intentionally at work or at home, nor should we all act in an ethical manner. This is especially because certain contact circumstances we encounter at work on a regular basis don't demand a lot of mental alertness or concentrated communicative behavior. In these situations, what is expected is not conscious but mindless or unconscious, often scripted responses. We don't choose a technique consciously, we actually fall back on implicit habits that we have successfully used. In more difficult circumstances, cognitive psychologists say that mindlessness is one way the brain conserves its resources. This is not to say that relying on fatigue communication or small talk is a good thing. However, I consider fatigue communication as one of the main disadvantages of communication forms because an overdependence on mindlessness limits our cognitive capacity to construct new narrative or inventive reaction and otherwise develop the variety of communication strategies that we introduce to current changes. Furthermore, communication ability is a skill, and it takes preparation like any competence. We cannot use the full output of our communication ability if all we do is focus on small talk and routine reactions. The excessive dependence on small talk is likely to cause others to see us as nice but ordinary. For these factors, as mindless conversation affects our daily experiences, progress in company and professional conversation is unlikely to occur. On the other hand, mindful communication, as a reflective approach to interaction that helps one to actively interpret contact as a conceptual and emotional process that is simultaneously purposeful and strategic. In order to help us reach desirable ends for others, we use our heads to come across strategies that we encode into conversations. In other words, we become more conscious as we become aware of our context, which leads us to make a rational choice. I really think that this model is a beneficial one because also mindful communication requires analyzing communication situations, thinking actively about possible communication choices available to us. Also, we can say that we can adapt our message to inform, persuade, or otherwise influence our listener or the audience. Third, I can say also that we can evaluate the feedback we receive as an indication of how successful we were in accomplishing our purpose. And finally, I will finish by saying that we become more conscious of communicators, which is to become more mindful and more strategic in our dealings with others at work. And it should also help us to be more ethical as well. So thank you, Mr. Youssef, for giving me the floor, and I will give it to you also.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. I'm asking again Rahma to come to the floor and tell us more about your specific strategy, which is the classic and why we should use it in a startup, and also why is it beneficial.
Yes, of course. So as I've said before, the classical management was mainly used with the start of the Industrial Revolution. But as opposed to the other participants, I would not really encourage classical management for a startup because clearly it has a lot of strengths, being, for example, a clear structure of management, functions and operations, division of labor that can make tasks easier, clear definition of employee roles. But on the other hand, I do agree that classical management um, doesn't care much about improvements into an organization, which is an important, which is very important for workers, because acknowledging their work is very important. So it has many flaws, and for example, um, attempting to predict and control human behavior, or the theory also views workers almost as machines, but fails to take into account what job satisfaction, employee input, and moral can bring to the workplace. And again, the reliance on prior experience and the ability to apply it almost solidly to manufacturing settings is another drawback of this theory. So personally, I would think that the whole experience of a startup is to work as a group, which is not at all what is classical management is about. Um, so yeah, it has many flaws compared to its strengths. And thank you for letting the floor to me.
Understandable. Understandable. Thank you so much, Rahma. And last but not least, we have Selma. She's going to talk to us some more about transactional model and the HR model, to tell us
Mm,
why the HR model works, what is its drawbacks and its advantages.
Okay, so as a social researcher, I've done some research, and it came up that there are a lot like more advantages than cons. So some of the advantages of the transactional model of communication are there is a shared field of experiences, meaning that in an organization, sorry, when you opt for the transactional model, you can actually benefit from sharing your own experiences and getting simultaneous feedback. And it's the most formal model of communication, meaning that it's the most used or common model of communication. And it also focuses on psychological determinants of the stress response over which we do not have control. And it also emphasizes the personal nature and individuality of the stress response. Moreover, it also emphasizes each individual's role in interpreting what that situation means to them from their own perspective rather than from like a general perspective or from another points of view. So it allows more variability in this way and in the human stress also response, and it helps explain why different individuals respond in different ways to the same experience. For example, the cons, actually I didn't find a lot of cons when I did some research about this transactional model, and that's why I think it's the best model to opt for in a startup. So the cons, sometimes it can be very difficult to test through experimental research because of subjective nature. Because when you opt for the transactional model, again, you tend to give more of your personal view, so it includes your emotions and feelings. Therefore, sometimes you're not being logical, and that doesn't work in a company or in a startup or in an organization. You need to be logical and without involving a lot of your emotions though. And the second con actually is that some psychologists doubt that we actually need to appraise something or things in general. So without being biased, I think it's the best model because in a startup or in a group work or in a work field or organization, sometimes we have to take into consideration what others may feel, what others may think, and therefore I think it's the best process of communication that should be used in startup companies or in work fields. So yeah. I hope I have answered to the question, and now leave the floor to Mr. Youssef.
Thank you, Selma. Now we're we're just gonna return to the debate format and we're gonna add everybody in so that we can talk about some more how or what is the best hierarchy when it comes to startups. So
Okay.
if you guys can unmute yourselves. Yusuf?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Right. I was just saying that you guys should unmute yourselves. Now I'm just gonna pose the question and you guys can just chime in and give your opinions about it. What is the best hierarchy when it comes to startups, especially a startup that's 5 to 10 members in a team? Do you think that there should be one on top of the other and somebody is boss, or do you think that they should be a team on one single level so that they can get projects done and just advance with the startup as much as they can as a team? And this basically just talks about what model you guys think is the best for a 5 to 10 startup.
I personally believe that for a team of 5 to 10 people, the system theory is the best one. As I said before, it is the best one for starting up companies. And since I've been working in a law firm, we have just been starting out 3 years ago, and we're still a team of 7 people. So I would know that this is a better strategy since we have a direct communication between us, whether they're informal, informal. We all consider each other kind of a family. So using strategies or making decisions or having meetings are easier that way. I just really think that for starting an organization, it could be the better strategy since it will be more of a trust-based relationship rather than an extremely formal one where you kind of have a hierarchy forced upon you. I also think that classical management could be a really good one if the company grows to more than 15 people. But since we're staying in this small, precise number of people, I think systems of thinking is the best one to take.
Yeah, I think she's right. Because, yeah.
Go ahead.
Because if there's no one on top of the other, then there would be a mess, and everyone would do whatever they want, and there would be no rules, and no rule to abide to, and yeah, it would create a mess, and work would be inefficient.
I second the point of view of Aisha, because I think that's a startup that has only few people. The best way of organizing it is to connect everything, which is the principle of system thinking, is that everything is connected and that there are no departments. Like, if we give an example we can give the example of the car, for example, where if there are multiple parts alone, nothing would work. But if we just combine it together, it works perfectly. And it is the example that most fits system thinking, where every worker works as a group with other people, since it is a small number of people that work in the startup. And I think that system thinking is the best fit for a small startup.
Okay.
Also, I agree with what Aisha said, but also I think we can follow her strategy, but we need to use, I think, the mindful communication also, because as we said previously, it can give us a beneficial outcome in terms of different possible, like we said previously, it gives you the possibility to analyze communication situations within a company, so you can think actively about possible communication choices you can choose with the person you are working with, and also to adapt the message and to inform and to persuade, otherwise to influence, I think, the people you are working with. Thank you very much.
So what I understood is that if we gather all of the models of communication, we could have only one, and that would be the perfect, because every model or every process of communication has its pros and cons. But if we manage to have like all of them gathered, then we would have a very good startup or a very good company. Um,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's obvious that for a 5 to 10 member team startup, uh, they can go ahead and just experiment with every single struct of their specific team and see what is the best fit for them, because at the end of the day this structure is made to help them and help the company forward. And so I just feel like that for a 5 to 10 member team, they can afford to switch up their structure and just experiment with different things and 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 different management styles, and just see what they finally like agree to work in. But again, the bigger the company is, the less flexibility you can have, because when you're trying to structure 200 and 300 or even 1,000 people, that's going to be a huge problem for you, especially it's going to be a big hit to production and just being creative. And so I feel like these management styles are most like the best at specific situations, and I feel like the startup specifically is best fit for systems of thinking, because I feel like in a startup, especially with 5 people, they usually are very interconnected. So you cannot have this idea of he is the boss, he's higher up than me, etc., etc. It's more likely just members that have a specific experience or knowledge that complements another person's knowledge, and they have to be interconnected with each other and fully communicating with each other, so they can create and move with the company.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that
So
everything is connected, I think that it improves the employee moral and increases loyalty, because every idea is shared with everyone, be it the CEO of the startup, the manager, supervisor, etc. Everything is shared, so it gives room to more creativity and loyalty, moral, etc.
It is really just a big preacher for equality in business startups. However, even though it's an efficient strategy, I would still say that it would be better to create a small number of people if you're trying out, for example, for a law firm or I don't know, for a micro business. It would be better to keep it that way, because the moment you start adding up more than 15 people, it would be more of a fight over control, which is not what systems of thinking is about, since it is
Um,
based
that
of trust than trust.
I'm
Exactly.
sorry, actually, you said when there is more than 15 people, then it's so hard to control. That's what you said.
What I said is that if we go further than 15 to 20 people in a small startup, it will become more than just like decision making between groups or family members, as I said before in the presentation. It will be more of a fight over control. It would not be playing on the same equal ground. There will be people who will start trying to put some kind of hierarchy, and it is not the foundation of what systems thinking theory is about.
Yeah, okay. I see. Then that's why we have departments in an organization. Like, for example, there is human relations or human resources like the department, and then like business department and everything. And there is one on top of each of the employees in each department, and that doesn't create actually a problem like in control. So as long as people are following the rules and as long as people are taking into consideration what others may be thinking and what others may be feeling, I don't think there will be a problem. So it's more of management again. Yeah. like instead.
Yes, for
to,
sure.
to cut the debate short, but we have our allocated time for this debate. It is already 15 minutes in. I just want to say thank you guys so much for being with me here. Thank you guys for chiming in and giving your opinion and also explaining everything else. And all I can do right now, since we don't have any comments or questions, we don't really have a Q&A. This has been a very successful mock webinar. Thank you guys so much for chiming in.
You're very welcome.
Thank
We
you.
will see you
Thank
Reminder.
you for this webinar. Thank you very much.
for the
Thank you for
final
having us.
webinar that's going to have people and hopefully are going to have some comments to answer and just advance the conversation some more. Thank you guys so much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
For you too.